welcome to another edition of the Crotchety Old Man Podcast. I'm your host, George Crumley, and today in the studio with me is my co-host, Gary Smith. Smitty, how we doing
George,
today?
we're doing exceedingly well, man. I am so glad to be here today. It's a special day at the Crotchety Old Men podcast, and so I'm really excited, man.
Man, that's great. Any day that we can get together and share information with our community is always a good day. Today is special because we got another special guest. And I
Uh,
think that the thing I'm really enjoying about the guest we have today is that, she's of that what we'll call Gen Z generation, which, here in the Crotchety Old Men, it's important for us to get different perspectives. It's always not about how we see life, but it's about the other generation, the generation that's coming up behind us and how they see things, that and how they're affected by things today. So with that said, Smitty, I'm gonna let you introduce our guest today.
all right, well, George, look here, man. It gives me great pleasure to introduce this young lady. Kayla Smith is her name. She's 24. She's currently a medical assistant for a behavioral health, mental health facility in Detroit, Michigan. She also serves her country as an Army Reservist. Kayla is a student at Eastern Michigan University where she studies biochemistry. Now, while her passion and focus is in the medical field, I understand that she aspires to be a pediatric surgeon, but it doesn't stop there. This young lady is adamant, man, about starting her own business, being an entrepreneur, I should say, and I think she got that gene from her dad. But she's in hot pursuit of creating businesses that will produce passive income. She's also learning about trust funds and the importance of wealth. And man, I could go on and on. The lady is also a well-traveled. I think she's been in more countries than she has cities in the United States. She speaks several foreign languages. And hey, without any further ado, let's welcome Kayla Smith. Yay!
Hello, everybody.
Welcome, welcome. Well, and before we go any further, I'm going to say thank you for your service. I think that's
Thank
an
you for your
honorable
support.
thing. And I'm going to, before, like I said, we go any, I want to make sure that I say that. Thank you for our service. So, Kayla, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Well, my dad gave me such a great introduction. So yes, I'm Kayla. I have a passion for business. I have started two businesses of my own currently. I've done a lot of research as far as trust funds and life insurance. Just educating myself on what is going on in the world around me because it has become a big change from when I was growing up to how it is now after the pandemic. It is not something that I was used to before, but now it's something that I've grown to love.
Very good, very good. So now, Kayla, when you look at businesses, you say you started two of them on your own and stuff. What is it about being an entrepreneur that appeals to you most? I mean, because being an entrepreneur is a tough thing. So, kind of expound on that a bit.
For me, I love the idea of having something that is of my own, something that I can grow and I can watch grow, and that something I know that can make me a profit. That's for one thing. That's one thing for sure. Something that can definitely make a profit, but that's something that can also benefit the economy.
Okay, good. So now, go ahead, George. I'm sorry.
Yeah, I was just going to ask, just for our audience, if you can tell us what type of business you've started.
Yeah, of course. So, one that I've recently started is a vending machine business. One that I've started 2 years ago is actually a woman's clothing line. And both of them have been doing pretty well lately.
So tell us a little bit about the vending. How many locations, how many different machines, and how did you get started doing the vending business?
So,
Because I'm particularly interested in that.
I actually just got two locations, and I have my vending machines coming in shortly. Um, I will be going ahead and going forward with my clothing line a little bit further into the vending machines as well, adding in different things as that for in the universities, and putting beauty supply products there too. With my vending machines, I have them in different locations, both at beauty supplies or beauty schools and then also transforming them to going to the universities, making it easier for college students and for cosmetology students.
Yeah, as far as passive income, I know you spoke about that and creating that versus the 9 to 5. It's been a somewhat of a misnomer, if you will, that the Generation Z don't want to work. Okay, they're looking for ways of not doing that 9 to 5, but I don't see that as being a negative if you're going to replace that adage with having your own business. So my question again is like, terms of creating the businesses that you have, is it for the purpose of being your own boss where you're not tied down to a 9 to 5, or do you see that as a more of a freedom, a way of having the freedom to do other things in your life?
I see it as more of a freedom, but as time grows, I've also realized that it is more than just a freedom for you to have it as a side hustle, which a lot of people in my generation call it, just having a additional thing as a side hustle. I see it as something that can be in replacement of a 9 to 5, but it doesn't have to be. It can be just an addition, and as an addition, it profits way more for than some 9 to 5s after taxes, after all of the utilities, rent, everything that you have to go through. You're pretty much left with the bare minimum, even with a degree. So having something that's of a little bit extra income actually benefits a lot more people than my past generations have realized. And my generation has made it where even if we did choose to still have our 9 to 5, we can generate even more income with our passive income. And we found different ways of passive income to do that, whether it's having the inventory here or just having the inventory somewhere else and shipping it to other people. It's made it where in my generation, we have profited more from our technology and from our strains and everything else than we would have doing it the regular paper way.
Interesting. One of the things that shape us as individuals is obviously our parents and the upbringing that we have. But I'm curious from your perspective as how the political as well as the environment that you are here again subjected to from a day to day living uh, perspective is how that it has influenced your life and the things that are most important to you that back in our generation may not have been important.
So from my perspective, I believe that things as far as social media, TikTok especially, has overseeded a lot of what most people could even imagine. You can go on TikTok and get over 40,000 followers just off of one video. And that can end up getting you sponsors, and it can end up getting you into these different leagues that you have never imagined, because now you have people who want to sponsor you and they want to send you material so you can go ahead and sell it and create money for them and for you. Making the profit both ways is also a way that you can get more resources out. It's made it where even for Instagram, having an Instagram, if you have over 8,000 followers, you can still accrue money from that as well.
Oh, so you're telling me that there's money being made on Instagram and TikTok and all? And I used to look, and I used to look at it as foolishness. But now you're telling me people are getting paid for dancing and doing all kind of stuff out there. Is that right?
Yes, it's completely different than what it was with just having Facebook and only having Snapchat. And Instagram has grown since it first came out, I believe in 2006. From then to now, where celebrities and normal people can just make money just from their posts. A lot of influencers use it so they can get in contact with their different sponsors, they can get in contact with their different users, and in that way that has also made their business grow. Putting your link in the bio is what people always hear on YouTube, and they don't realize every single time you press that it's also 25 cents that's going towards their business. It's also them still accruing money for every view, every like, every comment, everything that you are doing on there is also giving them money.
So because of that, do you think it's made you more astute financially? Whereas growing up, I'm sure your parents talk to you, about finances, but not maybe finance 101. This is what you should do. But because of the way the media is, how all these things are accessible now, does it kind of ramp up the speed in which you become more financially astute?
It does, in a way. I think the issues with finances in the community, in the Black community, and in my generation is that from a young age, we weren't really taught the basis of things when it comes to finances. We weren't really taught any of that. And so, of course, after we learn what are dollars, what are cents, okay, now we know what money is, but how do we accrue money? How do we spend money? And how do we have to pay our taxes? These are all different things that we weren't really taught until after we get out of high school. Something that I've learned even recently is that within the school system, they made it so difficult for you to even learn how to use money that when you actually go out and get a bank account, a lot of people don't know how to do that within my own generation. I've met several people who have to ask somebody else as to how to start a bank account and how much they need to start a bank account. So a lot of people in my generation do online banking. So Cash App, Chime, things of that nature, because of the fact that it's easier. It's not going to confuse you in all these different ways, but what they don't realize is the terms and conditions might have them locked in for the wrong type of bank account that they need that is going to help them become successful.
That makes a lot of sense because in banking, is based upon a lot upon relationships. And it's particularly in terms of when you reach the point where, let's say, for instance, you may want to inquire about a loan for your business or to buy a home or what have you. And without a relationship, a human relationship, face to face relationship, uh, to me, from my perspective, seem like that would impair a person. But then I guess in the same train of thought, I see it all the time where I see the Steph Curry commercial where online you can buy a car, you can sell your car. And so whereas back in our day, George, if we're going to sell a car, I come to you, hey, you test drive the car, you like the car, whatever, kick the tires, whatever. Then we'll go back and forth and we come up with an agreement. Nowadays, they've kind of like taken the human element out of that. I mean, even with Rocket Mortgage, you can go online and get approved within a matter of minutes for a home. We're talking about hundreds of thousands of dollars. So, yeah, I kind of see where that's going in terms of the finances for Generation Z. Here leads me to another question. I mean, I got to believe there's a large number of Generation Zs out there that are somewhat like yourself, Kayla, that's looking to do things faster, better, quicker, more effectively. And for people like myself, we kind of look at that and say, man, those guys are lazy, they slacker, they don't want to work. They coming up with all these crazy butt ideas where they can make $100,000 in 4 hours and they go vacation. But to my surprise, some of that has become a reality. So, can you speak on that a bit?
Yeah. So I think that that is because of the fact that growing up, a lot of people believe that you have to work super, super duper hard just so you can make ends meet, just so you can make enough for your family or whatever. But now we've realized that you don't have to work that hard. You still have to do hard work, but you don't have to drag yourself out of bed at 6 a.m. to go ahead and make it to your 8 a.m. job to finally get off of work at 6 p.m. and then go cook dinner. That doesn't have to be your lifestyle. You can wake up at noon and work until 4 and then be done with one thing. That is just showing that, for one, there is a different way of doing hard work. You can still achieve what you want to achieve. But within that amount of time, you don't have to go underneath somebody else's employment. You can do it under your own employment and then increase that from there.
So it sounds like what we used to say, not work harder, work smarter.
Yeah, it's like we
Well,
took
yeah,
that and we ran with it. So instead
and
of
ran with it.
taking it as, oh, well, you absolutely have to work your hardest, you have to get a degree, you have to do the American dream or what they believe is the American dream to achieve greatness, then that's the only way that you can do it. But even Steve Jobs has shown that you don't need that. You can make a way just off of your own talent. And it doesn't have to be singing, it doesn't have to be dancing, it doesn't even have to be engineering. You can go off of what I've heard is somebody else's idea and then make it better. Not everybody has to start their own idea. Vending machines is not something that I just said, oh, let me create a vending machine. It was someone else is doing a vending machine, but I can do it better. And how can I do it better? Realizing that there is something that will always be better. There is always going to be somebody who is better. And taking that and running with that is way better than forcing yourself to work something that you're going to end up hating 60 years down the road.
Oh, so so we used to like they used to say like I'm glad you said the American dream. So the American dream was with a chicken in every pot, car one car garage, everybody gets a house. So how do you define the American dream?
I honestly believe everybody's American dream is different. For me, my American dream is creating a generational wealth for my children and their children. For me, it is having a 6 bedroom house and having a 4 car garage and having everything that I have set for my family. But in the same breath, making sure that I'm able to give back. Because if I'm just taking everything in, then when I leave, what do I have? There's nothing for me. Everybody is going to end up passing one day. And since that is the case, I have to make sure I'm leaving something for the next generation, leaving something for other people. That is the true American dream to me, making sure that you are giving back.
Wow, that's incredible, Kayla. That's incredible that you have that foresight in regards to giving back. Sounds like you're very community and civic minded, and so kind of want to shift toward that because the giving back also is inclusive of the community, others and stuff. And I know about your philanthropic ways in terms of feeding the poor and feeding. I mean, not the poor, but the homeless. You're pretty um, adamant about doing that. Can you go into some of the more community related things that are that's near to your heart? Let's put it that way.
Yeah, so I love giving back. Something that I try to do every year is I'll go downtown and I'll make a bunch of sandwiches, usually about 20 to 30 sandwiches, more if I can. And I will go all around downtown and I will hand out goodie bags. They will have food, they will have drinks, they will have either hand warmers or socks or something that will be able to be of some type of benefit for them. And I believe that it makes me realize not just how grateful I should be for what I am able to do, but also how much it may impact somebody else. I think something that I've realized in my generation is there's a lot more people in my generation who give back than people realize. I've seen a lot of people in my generation who started charities and started different organizations and even have posted or like went ahead and rallied several times to try to make changes within this community, within our life, and it has impacted me in a big way where I felt like, okay, I need to be doing the same thing. But it's not even just for me. I want some people who are younger than me to want to feel the same way. They should want to give back, not just for themselves, but to see that, if we're all doing something, if one person is helping one other person, then there's no reason that we can't all succeed.
Excellent. Which this brings me to another topic, and it's very relevant and current in today's society. Is all the gun violence that's going on throughout our nation, and particularly it seems to be centered more so than not around some of the Generation Z's. Look, especially the youth and things of that nature. And I don't think we look at it in the totality in which we should address it, because those deaths and those acts of violence has permeated throughout the communities, both black and brown. And there's got to be some type of financial impact to that. What are your thoughts about that, Kayla?
There is definitely a financial impact. I, for one, um, am completely against gun violence. And I feel as though at this point, it has become just a norm within the community, especially within the Black community. It's gotten to the point where people just rather shoot instead of talking things out. And it's affected our economy as well. And it can affect our economy even more so. If everyone in the Black community had life insurance, for instance, we all had life insurance, and then we had this entire thing of gun violence that has impacted our community, where even just this past weekend 32 people were shot and eight were fatal just in Chicago. In Detroit alone, there were 16 shootings and four were fatal. If that is the case, then if between those two shootings, that's about 12 people who died. If the insurance companies had to pay for that, then they would actually need to make a change. And that was just within one weekend. Now, it's the statistics say about 500 people have get shot per day. That's a day. So if that's just within today, 500 people get shot. Tomorrow, that's another 1,000. And we're doubling and tripling that every single month. And for especially during the summer, it's a lot worse. For some reason, when people come out during the summer, they lose all their common sense. So they have their fun and everything, but then they lose the sense of how are we going to react towards something that is done towards us. So they always feel as though they need to go ahead and have this extra bit of violence instead of having a conversation like people did back in the day half the time. Instead of that, now we have this thing where it increases insurance. And if they increase insurance, then it will actually impact the economy where they will have to make some type of gun regulations towards it.
So I'm a firm believer in laws change behavior. So continuing with this conversation, what laws do you think need to be changed to impact the behavior of, gun freewheeling gun violence?
I believe, for one, for an example, the state of Florida just made it legal where you do not have to have a permit for your concealed weapon. I believe that that should not have been changed. I think that we need to have permits, for one. There needs to be an age limit. I don't think anyone under the age of 21 should be able to have a weapon, especially a gun. It is extremely dangerous. And with me being in the Army, seeing how dangerous it can be and how protective we are, even during our practice runs, is very important. And a lot of people don't take the CPL classes. They don't go ahead and go the extra mile for safety. And that is another issue. I believe that if we had it where it was required that you have to take a CPL class to receive a gun, then there would be a little bit more cautious to having any type of weapons out in the street. Also realizing that there shouldn't be AK-47s and all these that are just walking around on the street freely. That is something that either only the military or the police are should be able to have, and that's only in extreme cases. Even still, I don't believe the police should be walking around with things like that if it's not an extreme case.
Very well said. And those. I'm not going to say that it's the common sense approach, but it does sound pretty matter of fact because, like you say, the more educated people are by taking these types of classes, gives them more. They're more cautious about how this happens. So yeah, if you put those types of rules in place, you definitely would influence the results of what we're seeing today. So staying in that same vein, how do we reach our young generation as far as being distracted by such things as gun violence and how do we get them in a mindset, and what age do we get them in a mindset of being more contributors? And following obviously some of the steps that you followed to creating a life where it's going to be life well lived, life that's giving back, and things of that nature. How do we reach young folks?
I believe using the media. Social media has impacted a lot of people. And it's impacted people in a way where you can get on live and you can say whatever you want. But if enough people actually band it together to use social media in a positive way instead of a way to just knock people down, then there will be able to be a worldwide view of how things can change. There are actually, the US is the only country that has the highest gun violence rates in the entire world. We have this instance of where gun violence has become the norm, and it shouldn't have. It should have never been the norm. But with how music has changed and how the media has changed, it's created it where it has been the norm. It's been the cool thing where everybody has to take a picture with it. I've seen several pictures on Instagram of just people who follow me where they're just showing off their guns, and it's just making them a target, as well as making it as seem as though they are a predator. And if you're seen as a predator, you're going to be treated as a predator. And then the prey are going to do the same. It's the same thing with the circle of life. As long as you're going to go hunt, someone else is going to be hunting you.
That's an interesting perspective. From a financial perspective, you kind of touched on it earlier, is that life insurance. And I believe that's one way that change can be brought about. If insurance companies had to pay for all the deaths and injuries that are attributed to gun violence, change would come about, because anytime all you have to do is follow the money. If insurance companies had to pay a claim every time a black life was lost, every time somebody, because we hear about the ones that die, but we don't know about the people who have gotten injured. We got 18, 19, 21-year-olds walking around with a colostomy bag. Their financial future is almost ruined. Their ability to get stable employment or create jobs and opportunities, much less graduate from school. Those who are injured with spinal cord injuries and confined to wheelchairs. And there's so many life-threatening injuries or life-changing injuries that come from this gun violence. If insurance companies had to pay for all this shootings and all these things that's going on, that would have a financial change, because it certainly has a financial impact in our communities, because many people, that's why you see so many GoFundMe things, because they don't have the insurance to pay for a decent funeral. They don't have the medical insurance to pay for life long challenges that's derived from the gun violence. So I think rather than changing laws or improving laws or adding more laws, someone needs to pay for it. All right. The NRA doesn't want to make any changes about who should and who should not have an assault rifle. Let the insurance companies be the advocate, because they're going to get sick and tired of paying out hundreds and millions of dollars every time a black or brown child is killed. And I'm not being racist. It could be anybody's child. It could be white, black. It doesn't matter. But that is what I believe needs to happen in order to reverse the financial impact that gun violence has. Nobody talks about that. They talk about the numbers and all that sort of stuff, how many people got shot and everything. But until we reduce these bullets to dollars, I think that's when we'll see a social change in gun violence.
I agree. I also believe that something that would be beneficial to the gun violence and to the change would be if they actually did a mental health survey. A lot of the people who are wielding these weapons are not mentally stable, and which leads into more mass shootings and the school shootings and things like that. Like I said, there's violence also all over social media. Social media has a good and a bad side, which is why we're seeing much of these younger kids who are 6 or 7 going to the schools with a gun. And that's already scary in itself, to think of an elementary school where a 6-year-old has a gun because somebody pushed them the other day. That's not something that a normal 6-year-old would do. It's not something that a lot of people would see 10 years ago. When I was 6 years old, I didn't think about bringing a gun to school. And I'm pretty sure a lot of people can attest to that. But yet, in social media, a lot of people don't pay attention to what their children are seeing, what they're hearing, what they're dealing with, and they're not really speaking to their children anymore. And so now we're seeing that this is also rising as well. I think the other thing is, as far as with gun violence, especially, is changing how people see guns. A lot of people see them as a fun toy. It's not a toy. It's very dangerous. It's not something that you just play around with and you can have fun with. It's something that you have to be very serious about. Even if you go to a gun range, they give you all the rules. They tell you that you have to wear this protective gear. They tell you everything that needs to happen with this weapon, because at the end of the day, it's a weapon. It's not a water gun. It's not some little fun toy that you get to play with from the water park. It's a weapon, something that can hurt someone and kill someone, which is also something that has happened not too long ago, where a 16-year-old was just picking up his two brothers and he ended up at the wrong house and got shot twice in the head. That should have never happened. And the man never opened the door, asked, "Who is it?" or like, "What is your business here?" He just shot right through the door twice. An innocent 16-year-old who plays a bass clarinet, who's in the band, who's a great A student. Yet and still, his life has now been changed and evoked because of the fact of gun violence. Because someone didn't have the correct knowledge or possibly the mental stability to know what to do in these cases. It could have also has to do with racial profiling. A lot of people are trigger happy. Knowing when and when not to pull the trigger is very important. And it's the first thing that we learn with carrying a weapon, not to have your finger on the trigger. You always have one finger off, because you never know what might happen. A slip of a finger can change someone's life.
Wow, it is so refreshing to see our younger adults, as I'll refer to you, with so much passion for this subject, because I think that's so important. Because here again, for me, you are the future, and with that type of mindset, makes me feel that you know as you influence people, the future is in good hands. Sticking with that, you being in Detroit, I'm in Atlanta. You touched a little bit about Chicago, because that's where a lot of those are the stories that hit the newspaper on a daily basis. Let me ask you this: from a financial outlook perspective, that also changes, continues to change how we look and how we do things coming out of Detroit. What do you see, next 10 years? I mean, how do you see things shaping up, because in 10 years, you'll probably be in your, most earning years. So from a Detroit perspective, how do you see Detroit being prosperous? How do you see this, coming? What kind of changes do you see coming? Can you speak to that a little bit?
Yeah, so Detroit has been making a lot of strides to grow and change between Metro Detroit and especially downtown. They've created more buildings, more jobs and opportunities for people. And the way I see for in 10 years, I think we're going to prosper in a big way. I think what's going to help us prosper in a big way, though, is making other curfew changes, making changes within the community to make it a safer place for everyone, not just during the day, but also at night. A lot of people that I've heard recently, especially after last weekend, was that no one really wants to go downtown anymore. They see downtown as a warfare. Like, if you go down there, you have to have some type of protection. If it's not a gun, then it's a bulletproof vest, because you never know what might come out. So I think that within the next 10 years, hopefully, we're going to see a big change in the industry as far as weapons. And I think that for sure we're going to see a huge increase as far as finances. I think Detroit is going to be one of the most profitable cities within the US.
Wow. All good stuff. All good stuff. Smitty, man, this has been a great podcast, man. It's so important that we continue to share this information and knowledge. And Kayla, you are such a knowledgeable person. Here again, I want to thank you for your service. I think that the influences that you've had in life are really reflective in your conversation, your knowledge, your passion for different things. I think you're a great example for our youth, regardless if they're millennials or Gen Z. And I think that, like I said, when I hear you speak, I believe, the world, the country is in good hands, because you obviously are influencing people on a day-to-day basis. So here again, thank you for your service, for appearing on the Crotchety Old Man podcast. In parting, is there anything else that you'd like to share with our audience?
I just want to say, be careful, be safe, and always, always show love to everyone, not just to the people you know.
Well said.
Well said.
Smitty, as
Yeah.
always, I'm gonna turn it over to you, buddy.
Well, hey, I'm sitting here with a great big smile on my face, man. Knowing that I like what you just said, George. That we can sleep well at night, knowing that the world is going to be in a better hands. Or people that we need more Kayla Smiths out there and like she said, just show more love. And with that, it brings me to this quote as we come to winding up this episode of the Crotchety Old Men. It's by Serena Williams. And George, you and I being avid tennis players and lovers, it goes like this. I've grown most not from victories, but from setbacks. If winning is God's reward, then losing is how he teaches us.
Amen. That's a good one.
So, here we go from the Crotchety Old Men podcast. And as we like to say, if you didn't know,
How
now
you
you
know.
know. All
Take
right.
care.
Take care. Peace.
Be safe. Peace.
This is Dr. Paul Clemens with the Crotchety Old Men podcast. If you're interested in financial tools to build wealth, and you're interested in ways to maximize your health through holistic alternatives, then you are just the audience that we're looking for. Tune in each week, every Thursday, to the Crotchety Old Men podcast, where George Crumley, Gary Smith, and I offer you in-depth discussions on health and wealth. Subscribe to the Crotchety Old Men podcast on Google, Spotify, Apple, iHeartRadio, or wherever you get your favorite podcast.